Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Stray Pixels podcast, a podcast with absolutely zero blue-haired liberals. Just one blue-haired communist. I am your host, Noisy Pixel staff writer Colin Buchanan, and I am joined by my regular co-host, staff writer Nathan Mejia.
Hi.
How are you doing this week, Nate?
I'm just a socialist, but otherwise I'm doing fine. Besides the funkiness of the Soul Hackers 2 Collector's Edition being delayed and then my copy not arriving till way after launch, I'm doing
I've
good.
only gotten to play like 2 hours of it. It's okay. It's like if Atlas made an Idea Factory game. Is my take so far.
Kind of.
It feels like a lesser project than like Persona or SMT5.
Kind of. I'm not sure about the state of the world in Soul Hackers 2 yet, because I'm not sure where it leaves off.
I mean, here's the thing. Soul Hackers 2 has like no foreplay. You just go right into it, and that's kind of weird for one of these Atlas games.
Yeah.
Like maybe SMT5, also kind of throws you right in, but like SMT4 and Persona 5, 3, and 4 all have pretty famously lengthy prologues.
Yeah.
You're like on rails for the first 5-6 hours of Persona 5, and here it's just like, here's an info dump, here's the first area, we're gonna keep interrupting you with a whole bunch more info dumps, but you are in a dungeon, start fighting.
Yeah.
So it's I've been having fun. I just need more time.
I've been having fun. I like the new mechanics of the demon scouting. I think that is actually probably the best idea coming out of it. Mostly just because it gives demons a function outside of fusion fodder.
Sure, I do like that.
Yeah. Then of course, raising multiple demons at once, kind of cool. I will say I am happy it at least has its own identity outside of SMT and outside of Persona, although it is kind of like a weird fusion of the two. But otherwise, it's a good game. I also got my Steam Deck pre-order confirmed, and it's coming Thursday.
Yeah.
So next podcast is going to be the Steam Deck podcast.
Next week is going to be Kingdom Hearts Dark Road / Steam Deck.
Yeah. How Dark Road plays on Steam Deck.
But alas, that is not what we're talking about this week. And I'm going to introduce what we're talking about this week with a question. Nate, have you ever heard the phrase "get woke, go broke"?
Yes, 100 times. As well as as well as be gay, do crimes. And
would you like to explain what "get woke, go broke" means?
So it's actually kind of more nebulous to me. But I actually had to do research for this, because even though I am liberal, I was never really on the social justice side of everything, where, I think because a lot of my life, it's been more kind of some would say selfishly about me and my family. But
knowing your family situation, it's not that selfish.
Yeah.
So...
So as far as I'm aware, I know Get Woke had to do with the Black community and with police brutality, and it's part of the Black Lives Matter movement.
Yes, so that is where the word woke basically comes from. Like having woken up effectively from being the silent and oppressed population. And it helps because what you're doing to other people is you're also waking them up.
Yes.
But get woke, go broke is sort of a strange bastardization. And I guess strange isn't the right word, because the co-opting of the word woke has been going on for almost as long as we have been using the word woke now. But basically it is this idea that gets parroted around by traditionally people who are politically, socially conservative, that any series that starts to quote unquote get woke will immediately cause them to lose money and go out of business.
Yes.
As you can probably imagine, this is not particularly accurate.
all.
My favorite example of these people getting dunked on is all the people that said that the Captain Marvel movie would fail, and then it made more than $1 billion.
Mm-hmm. I have problems with the Captain Marvel movie outside of things, but it doesn't need to fail just because it's a woman protagonist.
Exactly. Everybody basically was yelling about like, oh, we don't need a woman protagonist, but moreover, we really don't need Brie Larson. Look at her. She's so unlikable. She's emotionless. She can't act. And it's like, did y'all not see Scott Pilgrim versus the World? Do you guys not understand the appeal of this person? Because like, that's your movie that you that like there's two movies that these people love to misinterpret, and that's Scott Pilgrim because they think that Scott is awesome and someone to look up to, and Fight Club because they think that toxic masculinity is good.
Wait, go back. They thought Scott is somebody to look up to. It's very clear.
They think it's a movie about Scott being cool.
No, it's about him being a piece of shit and him realizing
he's a cool
piece
guy
of shit
who likes video games. That's awesome. He's a nerd and he's dating a high schooler, and we love that. It's wild.
Yeah,
the way that people will but anyway, this is kind of a phrase that gets applied to video games pretty frequently too, given that video games are, completely nonsensically seen as a boys' club by a lot of people still, despite the proliferation and massive success of games that are very deliberately not marketed towards boys specifically. I would point you towards Stardew Valley as one of the absolute megaliths of gaming that it is now.
Hey man, guys want only one thing, and that's to grow the perfect crop. That is a boy game.
But I'm just saying, so girls have been in video games since the invention of video games. This is not, we've been known. This is not a new statement. But this sort of this idea gets spun into a whole bunch of other ideas. A lot of us make jokes about like in video games there are two genders, male and political. There's two races, white and political. Because basically any default protagonist that is not a heterosexual cisgender white man tends to immediately be labeled as an attempt by the developers to be woke.
And to ham fist diversity.
And this is something that I myself have kind of had to grapple with, particularly last year when I reviewed a fairly notorious game called Boyfriend Dungeon. And Boyfriend Dungeon was a game that was originally pitched as a dating sim meets action game where the characters that you dated in the dating sim became your weapons in the action game. And originally it was pitched as you were a female protagonist dating male weapons. This was eventually expanded to you are a protagonist of indeterminate gender, whichever you want to be. And you can date anyone that you want to in the game or everyone that you want to in the game. And the further you get in their relationship, the stronger the weapon becomes. It's a cute little game. The storyline is kind of disturbing, but it does now warn the player ahead of time that it's going to be disturbing. And the fact that it's disturbing has absolutely nothing to do with the fact that it has non-binary people in it. But like
scary.
the comments on this review kind of sucked. I got a bunch of lovely comments. I love the people that love my reviews. I really appreciate that. But I got several. One very recently for a review that came out more than a year ago. Someone saying, "Wait, is this a video game or like a weird purple-haired Reddit social warrior thing?" And I'm like, I don't understand the question. Because
Yeah.
even if this question is in bad faith, like I don't. Who are you talking to? This video is a year old.
Yeah. It just sounds
Um,
like somebody was trying to think they're being funny, because a lot of times those comments too, I'm sure, are from kids who are trying to be edgy.
yes. And like we can get to that because some very noteworthy events have happened in the last week regarding people feeding edgy ideas to children.
Mhm.
But I also got I think the focus on diversity and inclusion over good gameplay may have been the first red flag the game wouldn't be great. And to be clear, I had no problems with the gameplay. I said I liked it a lot.
Yeah.
My biggest issue is that the game ends kind of abruptly.
Hmm.
There's only 2 dungeons in the base version of the game. I haven't been able to go back to it to know if they added more when they added all the new characters,
Yeah.
but it felt like it just wasn't quite enough game for
Yeah.
what it was promising. It felt like it was saying it was going to be bigger than it actually was.
No,
And
I
that was my
agree.
big problem with it. I didn't have any issue with the gameplay itself. I thought it was very fun,
Mhm.
and I liked all of the weapon people that I dated.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know if this person just searched for boyfriend dungeon, didn't listen or watch the review,
Hmm.
and left the comment, and then someone else saying maybe if they put more effort into the actual game rather than virtue signaling, it would have turned out better. As a reviewer, I enjoyed games with diversity in them. Speaking as a white
Yeah.
guy, I've reviewed a lot of games from a lot of international developers that very heavily feature non-white characters. Two of
Hmm.
my favorite two of my top 5 games of last year were by I believe Brazilian specifically developers, and starred a large cast of non-white people, and those were Dodgeball Academia and Unsighted.
Yeah.
And I also gave Deathloop an honorary mention in that top 5, which is also a game with 2 playable characters, neither of whom are white.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that my stance on whether diversity in games is a good thing is pretty obvious,
Hmm.
but I would like to hear yours.
So I'm going to say, I think it's going to become pretty obvious from what I'm going to say here is I found out a lot of things about myself these past year. Um, and so I came from that more, I was inducted into that alt-right wing pipeline.
Hmm.
I started going through that process, and I didn't realize I was going through that process because it's very insidious.
Yeah.
Um, and when I sat back and really thought about it, I'm like, why am I starting to say these things that I would know I would never say in real life? Um, it came back to me, like it all came rushing to me, and I had to reevaluate everything I thought about myself for a little bit. That being said, I think diversity in games is a good thing. I'm I'm still figuring stuff out, and even now, I prefer games with a robust character creator that lets me create anything I want. Where the characters are, some are non-binary, some are, even transgender without saying it. Can it be done wrong? Of course, but I think when done right, it's an awesome thing, and we shouldn't be sitting there talking about how games can't be political and can't be diverse, and they all have to be white men just doing macho things.
Because, like, to be clear, video games are a form of art, whether we want to admit that or not. And art
Mm-hmm.
is political. All of
Mm-hmm.
it, no exception. If you make art in an attempt to not have it be political, you can't. That is a political statement.
Yeah.
Because an attempt to be apolitical is a declaration in support of the status quo.
Yes.
So that is the idea of apoliticism is a fallacy when it comes to things like creating art.
Mm-hmm.
And while I have mixed feelings on games that basically promote inclusion and diversity just by virtue of having a robust character creator, I don't think that a character you make yourself and make decisions for really counts as representation, you know? So like I wouldn't say that like Commander Shepard counts as gay representation just because you can make them gay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, I know what you mean.
Um, So that's it. That, that's a whole separate thing.
Yeah.
But it's just really frustrating when we are like, these people are so far in, basically the red pill zone,
Mm-hmm.
that anything that isn't an exact reflection of them is a political statement, and this doesn't belong in games,
Mm-hmm.
and women don't belong in games. Every time I see like a company stick its neck out even the slightest bit,
Yeah.
like even EA, when that Battlefield 1 trailer came out,
Yeah.
and it had a woman in it, and everyone lost their goddamn minds.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It kills me, because do you guys just want the same game over and over again? Don't answer that. I know the answer is yes, but
Yeah.
I don't get this mentality of wanting every game to just be about the white guy on the cover. We've talked about this before,
Mm-hmm. We've talked about
how
it.
the overrepresentation in video games of white guy holding gun on cover of video game.
Yeah.
And sometimes they play cheeky, because there'll be a reversible cover art of white girl holding gun on the back of the cover.
Hey, hey, that
uh
Mass Effect 3 reversible cover will stay in my heart.
Mass Effect 3 and Cyberpunk 2077 both did that.
Yes.
And it's frustrating as a journalist to see people come into my comments, and like Noisy Pixel itself is a pretty,
Very.
like, we're extremely diverse.
Oh yeah.
I'm a white male non-conforming, person,
Mhm.
who's also gay. Nate is non-binary and Mexican.
Yeah.
You know, Bailey's Asian, Pyre's non-binary. Like,
Yeah.
we've got so many people that are
Yeah.
not like I including our founder, who is also I believe Mexican by heritage.
Yes, by heritage.
Um so watching people look at like all of these names that are on the About Us site and be like, more games need to be about white guys, or more games need to have male protagonists. I've mentioned that comment before.
Yeah.
The person that was pissed that a game I reviewed had a female protagonist, because what about his son needing to play games and see himself represented? And it baffles me.
Yeah. That's so baffling, because even if a character isn't one to one what I can relate to, I can still relate to aspects of that character.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that idea of the universal truths and universal experiences that we all as humans have. And and I was sitting there thinking about it. I'm like, what does it qualify? Does it get woke? Because at this point, it seems like it's anything besides status quo white guy.
And if I can kind of segue that into some very recent news on this front.
Yeah.
A couple weeks ago, we got the first update that we've gotten since its announcement on Grand Theft Auto 6.
Mm-hmm.
One of the playable protagonists of GTA 6 is going to be a Latina woman, and they're also toning down the amount of offensive humor present in the game as compared to previous games in the series. I'm gonna preface everything else by pointing out the current gen version of Grand Theft Auto 5, the one that I reviewed, already had severely toned down offensive humor in it.
Yeah.
Mostly the developers were not happy with some of the transphobic jokes that were in the original version of the game, and they were removed. Because obviously people are allowed to go back and be like, hey, this really sucked of me to do, and if I'm going to be putting this content out there again, I would like to remove it from the definitive version of this project.
Yeah.
But you can imagine the absolute firestorm that this started on Twitter, because this is going to be the first female GTA protagonist, and they announced it at the same time as, we're going to stop doing shitty shock humor to the extent that we were before.
Yeah. Which is funny to me, because I've always viewed GTA as this almost clinical gangster thing where the jokes were just kind of out of nowhere, and it was supposed to be more serious anyways.
I mean, that might have been the case before, maybe before even Vice City, but
Mhm.
for quite a while, the games have been written as an intense satire of American culture, and
Mhm.
none of them really drive that home in quite the way that GTA 5 does, and even its original form. Like there's a shock jock radio station in it with
Mhm.
hours of pre-recorded content, just like hacking American conservative politics to pieces. uh by pointing out how stupid these people are. And it's like all of these bros just didn't notice that the
Mhm.
game was making fun of them, because it was also making fun of people who didn't like who were easy targets that shouldn't have been on the
Yeah.
table, like trans people. That's
Yeah.
punching down.
Yeah.
Whereas like making fun of conservative people who hold all of the freaking power in this country is punching up.
Yeah.
Also, Rockstar North is in Scotland. It's not even in America. Uh, but that also, you know, the UK Conservative Party
Yeah.
is bonkers. So
Yeah. Yeah.
this studio is fully qualified to take the absolute piss out of conservative politics
Yeah.
because Scotland has had enough of it.
Mhm.
But a lot of these people just didn't notice and pretended that the thing was different from what it had always been.
Yeah.
And we see that so often where this series will be like, hey, we have a new a new thing going on. We have a new protagonist that's not a white person or something like that.
Mhm.
And you know, a whole bunch of grifters will jump on it and be like, oh, this series is going woke and they're gonna go, and it's like the people that pay attention are like did you
Mhm.
not read the previous comic books to know that this was what was going to happen?
Yeah.
Not like have you not played the other games in the series that also featured this kind of ideal?
Yeah.
It happens over and over and over again.
So it happens, and like I don't even know where this idea of can't be political in video games came from. Metal Gear Solid, one of the most popular freaking video games of all time, is the most political thing I can ever think of.
And yet
Granted,
there's people that don't get it. There's people that do not parse Metal Gear Solid.
I I don't get it. I don't get how they can sit there and be like, "Oh yeah, that's I was apolitical." I'm like, "What?"
And we actually, I think I might have mentioned this on one of the previous episodes, but recently we saw someone upload a mod for Spider-Man Remastered on PC that removed all of the pride flags from the game and replaced them with American flags. And that mod was banned from Nexus Mods.
Oh,
And
good.
the person who made the mod was also banned because they uploaded the mod under a sock puppet. And the moderators of the website figured out that they were using a sock puppet because they were being a coward, and also banned their main account. A lot of people that cry get woke go broke don't understand that they are a minority.
Mhm.
And it's kind of funny because they're just desperate to feel like they're oppressed,
Mhm.
but they don't realize that they're not actually the majority in this situation, because
Yeah.
most people are fucking fine with it,
Yeah.
if not actively happy that more people are seeing themselves in video games and TV shows and comic books
Mhm.
and movies.
Oh yeah. And that I don't also get is that they're also stymieing any legitimate criticisms anybody could have
Mm-hmm.
about a said product. Because when you sit there and about Saints Row, how the main discourse right now is about the main cast, uh, like you know, a lot of people, even me or myself, I'm gonna go like, yeah, whatever, that's just you guys being an asshole. The game can't be that bad. And then real criticisms get drowned out because it turns into this big cesspit of people going, "Oh, of course this game is going like this. It's woke,"
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, well, no real discourse could be had now. You
And
killed it.
it's funny because like sometimes these games are just not good, but it's not because of the diversity and representation. It's because they're made under crunch culture, and they're problematic in other ways, and they're
Yeah.
buggy and broken because the people who are making them did not have the time
Yep.
to properly finish them.
Yep.
And that was something that was lobbied at Cyberpunk a lot. Cyberpunk is somewhat problematic in its depictions of you know, queer people. We already knew that. I knew that going into it when I reviewed it.
Yeah.
But the developers also showed a pretty clear understanding that, oh, we fucked up, and in an effort to like try and fix our fuck up when with that original piece of concept art.
Yeah.
Now the character creator allows you to make trans characters. It's frustrating that their pronouns are linked to their voice.
Yeah.
But it's an attempt by a studio in a country where trans people are not especially accepted.
Yeah.
Like they probably didn't know that they could have done better than this because they don't have that part of the conversation. They were trying, and the game shipped what 8 million copies at launch.
Yeah, something like that. It was insane how much it got, and then
a lot of people returned it because the game was broken, but the game wasn't broken because it had trans people.
No, yeah, it was like broken.
My response to, go ahead.
No. I said it's broken because of everything that was going on with it, and corporate overreaching.
Yeah. And like my response to that person that left that comment on the Boyfriend Dungeon review of is this a video game or is it a purple-haired Reddit social warrior thing? I said, yeah, I mean, as long as you're not triggered by stalking or non-binary people and you like dungeon crawlers, it's a fun time.
Yeah.
It's quick. You can get through it in a weekend, if not less than that. Like, the problems with this game have nothing to do with the fact that you can be gay in it.
Yeah. And in fact, I played Boyfriend Dungeon despite my interest being in women, and I love the fucking game. I love that game. Like I'm surprised. I love the characterizations. I love the interactions between the main character and the cousin. But I agree. That game is so short. It feels like you're not even through a dungeon before you can finish the game.
And it's like the writing in it is pretty phenomenal. I'm always impressed when a video game gets text conversations between young people sounding authentic, but all of the people that you date will text you and they all have different ways of texting you. It feels like completely authentic in a way that really impresses me. And it bothers me when people are like, oh, but it has too much pandering because one of the guys has blue hair and there's non-binary people.
Like, you don't even have to meet all the characters.
Get over yourself. Because this is just the way that the world is. And really, this is the way that the world always could have been, but y'all were yelling people down whenever they tried to be different. It's not that there are more trans people than there used to be. It's that there are more people who feel safe talking about it than there used to be.
And not only that, is there's more people just being able to hear this conversation. Like, I wouldn't have been non-binary before, and I wasn't non-binary until I was 27, 28, and it wasn't because of anything but because I could actually sit down and hear the conversations now happening. You know, it was a shock to me, and people don't understand it. It's like I grew up thinking I was a cis male my entire life. To find out I'm not was scary.
And you know, this is kind of going off on a tangent, and I mentioned James Stephanie Sterling all the fucking time on this podcast because I love the work that they have done. But watching them struggle with depression for years and years and years, and then they came out as non-binary, and literally 6 months later, they looked happy, they looked healthy, they were posting pictures of themselves like looking stunning.
They look fantastic, and they even look like they lost a lot of weight, and it looks good on them.
Like, that doesn't, you know, having lost weight doesn't have anything to do with anything else, but it like if someone is coming out of a depressive episode that's lasted years and they start losing weight, that probably means that they're in a better place because their depression was causing them to gain the like. I'm not here to fat shame anyone by any means, but when someone just looks noticeably happier because they decided, fuck it, I'm going to come out in this fucking gamer space, I'm going to be myself and I'm going to be happy doing it. All of these diverse games are what allow people the space, the freedom, the comfortability to be themselves more openly.
Yeah.
So, and a lot of these games, frankly, do well. Spider-Man Miles Morales is one of the best-selling PlayStation 5 games still.
I don't get it, because Miles Morales is one of the most popular versions of Spider-Man, even with the conservative crowd. So I don't get why people got mad about Miles Morales.
I don't know. I don't know. But like these games, they pick up traction because they're loved by queer people, and queer people talk to each other about this stuff, and we share these games with each other, and that's how so many of these games get so huge. That is how Stardew Valley has gone on to sell 10 times as many copies as the entire series that inspired it.
Well, there's a lot of reasons also.
Yes, but you understand what I mean.
No, I understand what you mean.
And cozy games aren't just for people that aren't, straight white guys.
Yeah.
It's not, we don't have to segregate games this way. We can have first person shooters starring women.
Yeah.
We could have action games starring non-binary people.
Yeah.
There's no reason to keep things segregated.
There really isn't, especially when you get into the more fantastical elements of what games can produce.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of tangent, but Nail Game and Sandman does this fantastically, where people of the other world appear ethereal and somewhere between a man and a woman.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it's like, of course that would be. It's egotistical to think God has a gender. Any God would have a gender outside of what they want to appear as.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just my take. And I also will say this: when you kill diversity, you kill any fresh ideas that you can have.
Mm-hmm. And like there is one game that I can think of that has talked about, oh, we're going to be super diverse, we're going to give you so many options, that I do not appreciate, and that is Harry Potter Hogwarts Legacy, because it seems very obvious that they made a big deal out of, no, we're so not associated with the author that you can even make trans wizard characters.
Awesome.
It is a damage control move.
It is.
And yes, Cyberpunk did something similar, but Cyberpunk didn't fuck up this badly.
No. And Cyberpunk didn't actively have its main creator go on Twitter constantly screaming about how
for years
people I hate it so much.
So if you're a major corporation who did a fucky wucky and is using diversity as damage control, fuck you.
Yeah.
If you're an indie developer and you want to create a game that is as diverse as the group of people that surround you and the people that made the game, good on you. I want to play that.
Yeah.
I love that kind of shit, because the reality is that these people, you see games with wholly queer casts because that is the queer experience. We get together.
Yeah.
There's I have lived in Milwaukee for 6 years, and I think I have maybe 4 friends who are straight white people.
Yeah. No, and not only that is, I always ended up in the trans community on accident.
I have so many trans female friends.
I have quite a few trans friends, and it's, I never understood it. I do now.
Until
we have a way of finding each other, and it's not because of anything, but because kind of like the stand user thing of you just have the ability to find people who are like-minded, and that's what it really is.
All right, so that's it for the first half of this week's episode. In the second half, we're going to talk about something I don't really want to reveal before we start talking about it. Stick around, it is somewhat relevant to this conversation, but to cover our own butts, you're just going to have to wait the 10 seconds or so to find out what we're talking about, because it's also not going to be in the description. So we will see you guys in a minute. Welcome back, everyone. So in the first half of this week's episode, we talked about the idea of wokeism in video games and why it's as bunk as the idea of wokeism in basically anything else. In the second half of this week's episode, we're going to do another one of my fun little rabbit hole deep dives into a story that kind of wrapped up last weekend as we're recording this. There's elements of it that are still going, but at this point we can pretty comfortably talk about all of it without fear of getting sued. But because of the volatility of the subject, I'm going to choose to omit this topic both from any mention in the title of this episode as well as in the description. This is just for the people that already listen to us. I do not need people coming into my mentions and yelling at me.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about a well-known voice actor by the name of Vic Minana.
Yeah.
So the primer on this gentleman. Vic Minana is a anime voice actor who worked for Funimation, very prominent in the late 90s and early aughts. Most notably, he played the title character, or the title character, but the main character, Edward Elric, in Full Metal Alchemist. This is basically the role that made him a mainstream name in anime, and then he went on to do other extremely notable voices like Tamaki in Ouran High School Host Club and Junpei in Persona 3, a role that he actually reprised somewhat recently in the Persona 3 dancing game. It's the reason why I have not finished that game.
A lot of Junpei's dialogue takes on new meanings after you hear more about this case.
So Vic Minana has a fan club that have dubbed themselves the Rissenbull Rangers. Rissenbull being Edward Elric's hometown in Full Metal Alchemist. This is a group of fans that either follow him to conventions or just like make him their priority. These were stans long before we had stans. And these were people that would like get photos with him every single time they saw him. They were really committed. And for many years, there were rumors, conjecture that Vic was a little bit too friendly with a lot of the young women that he took pictures with at conventions. And when I say young, I do not mean that stops at 18 and up. So obviously problematic. He also said some very questionable things regarding gay people, mostly because he is a very out and proud Christian. His side gig is performing Christian music, and he's been doing that for several decades as well. Including the idea that no character that he had ever given a voice to was anything less than 100% heterosexual, in response to fans talking about ship culture with him. And I will give you that ship culture is kind of a touchy subject with actors, but at the same time, shutting someone down like that is a bad look. Ask Jensen Ackles. So anyway, we have these rumors going on for quite some time, but nothing ever quite comes to the level of prominence it would take for someone to do something about it. He's just kind of like a creep with a lot of fans who goes around to conventions and takes pictures with them. And in was it 2019? I believe it was 2019.
Yeah, it was 2019 because it was before everything went down.
Yes, it was before COVID happened.
Yes.
In 2019, these stories really start to come to the forefront when Dragon Ball Super Broly is announced to be coming to North American theaters with an English dub. The title character being one that Minana has provided the voice for since the original Dragon Ball Z movies were coming out. So obviously he's going to be in this movie. He's going to be in theaters in this movie, which provides him with a lot of exposure to new people. And a lot of the people that he had affected had just decided that they'd had enough, and a lot of them came out of the woodwork at the same time.
Yeah.
And within a very short amount of time after this, Minana had sued Funimation, the company that he worked for, and two of his former coworkers, Monica Rial and Jamie Markey.
Yeah, both who had been kind of the lead voices for this movement at this point.
Notably, neither of them had explicitly said anything yet.
Yeah.
And Funimation had also not explicitly said anything yet. Funimation, after the first big wave of accusations came, and there were just too many of them to really ignore, made a public statement saying that they were parting ways with Vic Minana, but did not specify why. The only specific information that we got was that his role in the simuldub of the Morose Mononoke in season 2 was being recast. That was it. Yeah. And I believe that Rial and Markey liked a couple of tweets from people who were coming out and telling stories.
Yeah.
So Minana sues the company that he is saying unjustly fired him, and two of his former coworkers who have not made even statements of their own yet, but would pretty soon afterwards, because they were already getting sued.
Yeah.
Telling stories basically from behind the scenes that we didn't know about before, of lots and lots of harassing behavior towards female voice actors that worked for Funimation, lots of bad workplace behavior, up to and including the company needing to install locks on the doors between the dubbing studio part of their building and the management offices, because he would frequently barge into the management offices in between sessions and demand to be cast in more shows, and generally made a huge nuisance of himself. So basically, not only is he a creep, he's also a not ideal coworker, because he annoys everyone around him, and a lot of these people had just kept their mouth shut because he was so famous, and they knew what would happen if they tried to stick their neck out. And Minana made sure that it did, by mobilizing his fairly considerable conservative fan base in a massive hate campaign that I would honestly compare to Gamergate because of how intense it got. Both of these women had to move. They both received many, many, many death and rape threats. It's a whole big thing. And he was suing them for defamation, despite the fact that in court, he admitted to all of these things. He was just mad that people were talking about it. So of the 17 civil charges that Vic originally filed against Markey, Rial, and Funimation, as well as a few other assorted parties, two of them were, I believe, mistrialed or something along those lines. They were thrown out, and the other 17 he lost, all of them. Part of the reason why any of this happened was because once he started getting canceled, a bunch of his lawyer followers decided that this was the perfect time to clout chase. And started yelling, "Hey, I can defend you. You got a case here. You can get so much money from these liars who are saying that you did all these terrible things." And they were dumbasses. The two most notable ones being Nick Recchietta, who still streams on Twitch to this day as Recchietta Law, and he is just as much of a bastard today as he was back then. He was one of the people that was egging on Vic's fan base against the people that he was suing, telling them to keep harassing these women. And Ty Beard, the guy that would eventually go on to represent him, who I would compare to Alex Jones's lawyers from the Sandy Hook trial that played out a couple weeks ago, because he had no idea what he was doing. And nowhere is that more evident than in the fact that after he lost 17 of these cases, his lawyer told him to appeal.
Oh. Okay.
So he appealed those cases. after the judge had already issued damages in the form of repaying, I think, somewhere in the realm of $125,000 of legal fees to the people that he was suing, money which he did not have. So he made an appeal, and as of last weekend, as we are recording this, he lost every single one of those appeals. And so now he is in the hole for, I think, somewhere in the realm of $500,000.
Wow. It's so weird because I hear 125,000. I'm like, that's not even that much, like, not a lot of money for legal fees. You know, it's a lot of money.
It wasn't even going to cover all of the legal fees. I believe that was just the initial ruling on how much he had to pay. But now obviously the legal fees have increased substantially because this appeal has gone on for such a long time. And he is going to be required to pay a lot more.
Yeah.
So how much about any of this did you hear before we sat down tonight?
So remember how I said I was inducted into the pipeline?
Yeah.
This was part of it. This is the one that made me kind of realize, because I was following this case a lot, because I was like, kind of like, hey, and I've noticed a couple of YouTubers came up primarily for this case. Ricky Law, like you said, and then another one called Yellow Flash, who I think is relatively unknown.
Yeah, I can't say I've heard that name.
Yeah, but it's very much like he hides it a little bit more, but it's very disparaging remarks towards women, and the main focus was Monica Rial and I can't remember her name. Oh my gosh,
Jamie Markey.
And they would follow every little thing they did, and any little thing that could have been extenuated from what Monica Rial and Markey said was blown up and
These two are
pinpointed.
Bitches, they're whores, they're sluts. Yeah, all of that.
Yeah, look at them. They just laughed this autistic kid outside of a thing, and it's like, that's kind of where I was like, holy fuck, what am I watching now? Because it came from like this is the prominently people who are following this case to what is going on now. So I knew a lot of it. I knew mostly about the charges. I stopped following the case once more important things started happening, mostly COVID, and then I got inducted into Noisy Pixel, and I had actually jettisoned myself outside of the pipeline because I've decided vehemently that that's not the kind of person I ever want to be ever again.
And you got to get out before the brainworms absolutely ruin you forever.
Yep. And they were starting to. My mom was even taking notice, and now I'm in a much happier, healthier place. And I'm non-binary, so hey. But I knew a lot about the case.
The far right to transgender pipeline works again.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. It's like, how much of this is that because I'm actually kind of jealous of women? Oh shit. Oh fuck me. But yeah, no, and a lot of it was that I liked Vic Minana a lot, his voice career particularly. You know, I liked Edward Elric. I love Junpei, even though he was kind of an asshole. You know, and all his other various little roles. It's like coming up to me and going like, "Oh man, Johnny Young Bosch!" I go, "Johnny Young Bosch, where?" You know, he was at that level for me. So when I found out he was like this, I was like, "No, it can't be true." And I wanted in my heart for it to not be true, that he was actually the stand-up guy, and it was a couple of people just take it out of him because they wanted his job. They didn't want him here anymore. And the more you kind of hear about it, no, it's true.
And the fun part of this rabbit hole is that it goes deeper because So obviously Vic has been pretty much evicted from the established world of anime dubbing.
Mhm.
No one wants to work with him because in addition to all of this stuff, obviously he has been outed as just an absolutely horrifying employee
Yeah.
in terms of respecting anyone's boundaries ever.
Yeah.
Enter enter Anime Matsuri. So Anime Matsuri is an annual convention held in Houston, Texas, that over the last couple of years has begun to more and more noticeably cater to the right-wing side of the anime fandom.
Mhm.
A thing that exists, unfortunately. These are the people that yell about anytime a trans character appears in anime because they don't have trans people in Japanese. This is the translators inserting their agenda.
Oh yeah. You know.
Yeah, all of those delightful people. And so this convention, after basically every other convention, including the one where I live, Anime Milwaukee, who had Vic as a regular for years, becoming one of the first major cons to drop him in 2020 before the start of the pandemic, decided, hey, you know who's got a lot of free time right now? Vic Minana. Let's invite him and also invite his legal team as guests.
Okay.
And not only did they do that, but they also started a startup dubbing company. I don't know,
Okay.
collective. I don't know what you want to call it. It's not a very big deal in the broader scope of things.
No.
But of course, they are saying that this is going to be the thing that topples Crunchyroll. Is a dubbing facility run by a convention with 6,000 annual attendees.
The,
Yeah, totally sounds
the,
legit.
the only thing that's gonna
Um,
kill Crunchyroll is Crunchyroll, guys.
so they created a promotional animation for the con this year.
Okay.
And to voice characters in this animation, they got a bunch of people from different dubbing studios. They got people from Bang Zoom, they got people from Crunchyroll, all over the place.
Yeah.
And they also got Vic Mignogna on it without telling any of the other actors involved.
Ooh. Okay. Yeah, that's reasonable.
So this is now a dubbing studio started by people who run a convention in Texas that only gets about 6,000 attendees a year, that say they're going to topple Crunchyroll, and the entire business is just built around trying to revive this one guy's career.
Wow.
And Anime Matsuri this year was kind of its own special hell. I'm going to direct all of you to a Twitter account that's at Boycott Matsuri, because it's amazing. One of their guests of honor, because they were having trouble filling out the list of people that would make people want to go to a con. One of their guests of honor was one of the founders of the convention. Because they needed more names on the list that badly. One of their cosplay guests was harassed to the point that she left Friday evening and didn't come back. And this was someone that was invited by the con because there was a guy running around secretly filming her and holding up underwear and saying that it was her underwear and posting it on the internet.
What?
And the con didn't do anything. There were people running around with inappropriate costumes at what was supposed to be a family-friendly event. There were a lot of there was even more harassment going on that wasn't of famous people. And the people that run the con, I'm just gonna say that they're sus. If you want to look into it more, all I'm gonna say is that they're sus. I don't want to get sued by these people. But look into it and then don't go to this convention ever. Having been in Texas last week, don't go to this convention ever. And there's other sides to this. Obviously, Riel and Markey have been speaking out to the best of their ability. They have what I will lovingly call a podcast, but they only made 2 episodes in the last 6 months, called the In Touch podcast, short for We'll Be In Touch, named after basically letters and emails that they were receiving from Vic's legal team. But it's basically 2 around 90-minute episodes discussing their experience getting sued. It's not so much about Vic. A lot of it goes into Vic because people were asking questions about him, obviously, but it's mostly about like, hey, this is what it was like for 2 people who didn't do anything to get sued for saying words that were true. And the first episode is kind of a breakdown of what the narrative was around the lawsuit, and the second episode is a mailbag going into a lot of stuff about how Vic was as a coworker, and whether or not they've seen any sort of career hit from it. And the answer is no. Jamie Markey and Monica Rial have both been booked and blessed the whole time. A lot of people who, again, don't pay attention were yelling that they were nobodies compared to Vic. Monica Rial is potentially the most prolific English voice actor ever.
She's done a lot. The one that sticks out to me is Balma.
Yes, but I think she's got like over 250 listed voice credits. So, but all of these people, they're all doing fine. They got harassed by Vic and his lawyers for a while over a case that Vic and his lawyers were absolutely never going to win. Jesus. And that was probably really shitty, but they are still enduring harassment, death threats, accusations of laughing about the whole thing. And there is a lot of them making light of the situation in the podcast. I do find it a little bit frustrating as a listener, because I know that every time these women laugh, there will be people there to harass them about it, because they're supposed to be sad victims. And if they're not, miserable for the rest of their lives, are they really victims? But at the same time, this has been going on for so long that if you can't joke about it, like what can you do? How else are you supposed to, move on from it?
Yeah. Exactly.
And obviously there's, all the harassment of basically anybody that pipes up about the guy. I'm expecting at least a couple comments under this video accusing us of being obsessed, because that's their favorite word to use, when this is the first time I'm pretty sure I've ever brought up Vic Minana on this podcast.
Yeah, probably.
So, I mean, I think I might have on one other occasion when I was talking about Full Metal Alchemist, but
I think you might have made a joke maybe once, but nothing like
this. And this is episode 32, so this is 2 occasions out of 32 episodes where the guy's name has been in my mouth. But it's the whole thing is a bizarre train wreck that you just can't look away from, because on the one hand you have all the people that are being victimized, and on the other hand you have Vic crying and screaming about being victimized while being a Twitch streamer, and his entire career now rests on hey, remember when I was Edward Elric? Wasn't that a great show? I love Full Metal Alchemist. Like that's what he does now. That's his living. Is a thing that he did 10 and 20 years ago.
Oh, hey, kind of like Butch Hartman. I'm sorry, I had to.
You're good. Butch Hartman's his own whole rabbit hole. Oh my god. Butch Hartman created a couple shows that people liked as children, and then revealed himself to be a conservative asshole and tried to start a Christian conservative streaming platform without telling anyone that was what it was when they contributed to the Kickstarter, which didn't raise enough money to make even one show, let alone a streaming service. And the streaming service is, of course, shut down now.
Yeah. Oh, and then don't forget, he traced over a fan artist.
Shitty, lazy.
God.
So that's the reaction of a lot of these people that spent a lot of time being shitty
Yeah.
and then getting called out for it. Is they're saying my life is ruined, I'm the victim now,
Yeah.
everybody feels sorry for me about what those liars are saying about me. And meanwhile, Vic is over here losing technically more than 30 lawsuits.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's wild. It's one of the most dramatic falls from grace that I think we've seen in this side of the art of the art industry.
Yeah. One of the first for voice acting in anime,
Mm-hmm.
for sure, because it was kind of like it's weird, like club that was hard to get into, um, and kind of notoriously, you were in for life almost for
Mm-hmm.
some of these people.
And in the time since the Vic thing blew up, we've had a couple of other kind of shitty stories coming out about other voice actors. One
Yeah.
of the biggest ones was Karen Strassman, who is also a very prolific voice actor. I am most attached to her as the little sister from Persona 4.
Oh, that's oh no, and I'm sad
Yeah,
again.
she's an anti-vaxxer.
Sad.
And she is very confused online about why people are mad at her for being an anti-vaxxer, or at least pretends to be. It started this kind of movement to talk more openly about shitty voice actor behavior and not treat them like gods above us humans just because we hear their voices on TV.
Yeah.
And a lot of accountability is finally being dealt out to a lot of people, and some of them, their careers aren't even over. There's oh my god, Strassman's still doing work. Kyle Haber is still doing work. What's his name? Sean Schemmel is still Goku.
Yep.
Despite us hearing about what a shitty guy he is. Oh my god, I'm just remembering.
Yeah.
I always go on tangents. But there was this one narrative that Vic really liked to spin about how he was so much more popular at conventions than the people that he was suing, because he would have his followers go to conventions where Rial and Marky were attending and being guests and taking pictures of their autograph tables with empty lines when the lines were empty because they had just returned from lunch, or they had just cut the line off because their time was about to be up and they were getting to the last couple of people, and bragging about how Vic's line was always full, but Vic's line was always full because he would make people wait forever. It's so petty. The entire thing is so petty.
Yeah.
So we have Vic Mignogna and the far right anime convention trying to save him by burning its own reputation to the ground.
Yeah.
To the point where it's becoming very noticeable. The boycott Twitter account has over 1,500 followers, and again, this is a con that does not draw a crowd of more than 10,000 people.
Yeah.
It's a lot of really foolish looking people digging themselves in deeper and deeper and deeper. When the damage being done would have been dramatically lessened if they had just not.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's impressive how many words Vic says with his head shoved so far up his ass.
Yeah.
I wouldn't think that sound could carry that deep, but apparently it does.
Well, he was a voice actor for some reason, right?
Any final thoughts on this roller coaster?
I still wish it wasn't true, but now that we know for sure it is, I mean, kind of how it happened is I think how it probably should have happened, honestly. Sucks that it did, sucks that he's an asshole, but you don't need people that in the industry, and the only way you can unfortunately cleanse behavior like that is to nip it all from the roots down, and there is no warning. There is no thing. There is just, you're out of here.
Because this guy should have been taken care of a long time ago. And he was very much sheltered by the fact that he had a cult of personality. He had a devoted, an extremely intense fan base.
Yeah.
And it hid him from the consequences of his shitty actions. And to this day, he is still out there insisting that he has done nothing wrong ever, that he's a good Christian man who has definitely never cheated on his wife, even though he admitted in court that he has cheated on his wife many times with many different women.
Yeah.
It's just, it's kind of astounding the way that some people will get trapped in their own life. You know, I mentioned Alex Jones before. Alex Jones, in his defamation suit from that was served to him by several of the parents of the Sandy Hook kids, was on the stand still claiming to be bankrupt long after it had been revealed that InfoWars makes like sometimes $800,000 a day. And he's still up there saying that, you know, he only spent a very limited amount of time talking about this, and they're like playing him clips of all the times that he said that it didn't happen. And he's up there insisting on his lies to the point where the judge tells him, you are not allowed to say these things.
Wow.
We have demonstrated that this is untrue. You are not allowed to say that you are bankrupt to this court. You are not allowed to say that you didn't talk about it. And he's just up there like playing the victim.
Yeah.
These people buy into their own hype, and it robs them of all common sense, and they need to be excised much more quickly.
Yes. And it's telling, because I've always said that you can tell if you're a good person is after you do something, if you worry whether or not you're a good person. These people very obviously think they are a good person when it's clear they're not.
And on that note, I want to thank you guys for listening to another episode of the Stray Pixels podcast. We post supposedly every Tuesday on your podcast app of choice and on the Noisy Pixel YouTube channel. What do you guys think of wokeism in games? Did you like Boyfriend Dungeon? Have you played anything else recently that a really good representation that you want to talk about? What do you think well, no, I'm not going to ask for comments on the Vic Minana thing, because that's how this gets found. But if there's anything that you'd like us to talk about on a future episode, you can leave a comment under this video, or you can talk to us on Twitter. You can find me, Colin, at the Arcane Ranger, and Nathan at Less Than Nate, or the site itself at Noisy Pixel News. The Stray Pixels podcast is brought to you by NoisyPixel.net. Noisy Pixel is run by a group of gamers who work hard to bring you the latest news, previews, reviews, podcasts, and more. Please join our community Discord server to come talk nerdy with us, and like, subscribe, and follow to keep up with our future content. And we will see you guys next week.
Jamais.